We're live. That's how we start all of these. I guess I
Yeah,
should find a new way to start them.
we're
And
dead.
Mike, that's the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, and look, you're wearing a good shirt with good color. You have the right amount of headroom, even though you call it headspace. It's good. It's very
Well,
good.
it's because every time you say headroom, I think of that old TV series that I miss.
Max headroom.
Yeah, here we go. That's Max Headroom right there.
How's your week going?
Crappy. I mean, without specificity, I'll just say that sometimes life backhands you. And for me, this is one of those weeks.
Sorry to hear that. You want
But
a joke?
you're going to cheer me up. Yeah.
Yeah, you want a joke that'll cheer you up?
If it's a good one.
No.
Okay. It's one of yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where did dads learn to tell dad jokes?
From dads.
In the delivery room. Hey, by the way, that reminds me, if people haven't signed up for security awareness training and are not coming to our security awareness trainings, they're funny and they're never boring. In fact, a fellow marketer, I once called it never boring in capital letters. And he sent me a note and he said, "Oh my God, that's the greatest title for security awareness training ever because everyone I've ever been to is boring."
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Some of them are pretty bad. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a link in the chat to the security awareness training. Join us. Join Mike. Tomorrow's going to be Fred. And then Mike's going to be back in 2 weeks. And it's not boring. We have good stuff in there. So anyway, that link is in the chat. Let's talk about what people are here to see us talk about, which is more jokes. No, just kidding. The weekend news. The weekend news. So we're like John Oliver, discussing the dire state of IT security, how it's being exploited by nation states. What's new?
Wow. Yeah, that makes me feel better.
The delivery room.
Well, so I think we have to start this week with SolarWinds again.
Of course we do.
All right. The gift that keeps on giving just gave us some more. So we can't move on from this yet. Somewhat unsurprisingly, the SolarWinds event is getting weirder. You know that the president finally had an eyeball-to-eyeball chat with Mr. Putin, right? That is refreshing. Russian news is talking about U.S. payback for SolarWinds, and the Russian government has even alerted their critical sectors, so also refreshing. But that's not the part that's jumping out as weird. So did you read about SonicWall this week? So SonicWall, the company, was compromised using a 0-day in SonicWall, the product. So just setting aside the irony and the need to find out if you're affected, let's roll off a list of recently compromised companies. So FireEye caught it first, said SolarWinds has got a problem. Microsoft said, yeah, we got hit too. Mimecast said, yep, us too. Malwarebytes, SonicWall. See any pattern emerging here? Right. So the evidence suggests, and it's circumstantial at this point, that security companies were compromised very specifically. And maybe that was for the purpose of making changes to their products that would nullify their effectiveness or, create backdoors or some other kind of persistent access into their customer networks. So what do you think, Jake? Is that just a coincidence or do you think there's a there?
Well, it sounds like more than a coincidence. I mean, with, of course, a touch of Hamilton hyperbole. But why would state actors, assuming that's who's behind this, although, do this as a part of an intelligence operation? Was this primarily espionage, that it was a story, for publication, at least initially, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, so let me give you a long answer to that. So when we talk about disruption of critical infrastructure and the cyber Pearl Harbor thing, I don't really think that's going to go down the way everybody's been discussing, right? Like the power grid being knocked out. That would clearly be an act of war. But if access gained during an espionage act, right? Because remember, right? Well, we got to look the other way on that. We do it too, blah, 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 right? especially if that act is extensive, which is sounding more and more like it is. If that access is transitioned to criminal actors who are encouraged to go crazy and steal everything they can, we get economically crushed and there's no statutory recourse. Okay, so this whole cyber Pearl Harbor thing could be purely economic, and that's kind of lining up this way, right? It's the same problem we have now. How often do we catch the people that are extorting and stealing the hundreds of billions of dollars leaving the country every year? Effectively none. So if a state action is transitioned to criminals, that would seem to be an interesting false flag operation that has a lot of strategic benefit for the state sponsor.
Well, that
Right?
doesn't feel great. Thanks, Mike. But I
Mhm.
mean, but it's true, right? I don't know. It's tough. So Russia, don't do what Mike said.
Yeah.
And Mike, I hope you're wrong. Didn't McAfee say a couple of weeks back that cybercrime has exceeded $1 trillion? $1 trillion.
Yeah.
And that the military might start hacking back at cybercrime cartels?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was an interesting story, wasn't it? I think it said governments and not military, but we know what that means. All right. I think that's going to happen. This economic bleed out that we're experiencing, largely because of the wink nod attitude towards criminals in Russia, largely, that are not really that separated from the state, has to end. It is time to set an example. And let me just say, nothing focuses the mind like a public hanging.
Nobody likes to say public hanging.
I do.
All right. Change of subject here.
Okay.
What are some, give me some other news from the week, Mike.
Boy, there's a lot of news this week. So let's see. Chinese actors embedded themselves in, well, they apparently hijacked cloud accounts to do this, but they embedded themselves into high-tech and aviation firms. They were embedded for more than 3 years, seemingly for surveillance of travel for dissidents and activists and some of the people the Chinese government doesn't like. That was a big story. Even the big stories like come and go so quick because the next jaw dropper is just minutes away. Speaking of China, this one's actually kind of good. The deactivation of Flash, which is now officially dead, thank you, may have crippled the Chinese railroad system for a day. Apparently, there was some kind of dependence, and when Flash was finally deactivated, everything broke. So they ended up having to roll back to an earlier version of Flash to get trains moving.
So wait, did they not get that notice that that Chrome has had up in its browser for 6 months? That I kept closing and it kept coming back?
Yeah, but it was in English, so it wasn't effective.
They speak English well.
I know. But, I mean, the point here is, and I'm sure, lots of people have taken notice this, if they're dependent on Flash and they just roll back to an earlier version, guaranteed it's vulnerable. So Chinese railroads are vulnerable, if that's important to anyone. What else? In the health sector, report says web application attacks against health sector web apps are up 51% during the time of COVID. And, why would that be? Probably because a bunch of new sites had to go up quickly to adjust to the quarantine and, all the new way that we work and provide healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And they're probably full of bugs, or at least there was an expectation that there would be. And so hence, right, all the attacks. The federal government, a lot of changes right now. We've selected what a cool job title. So what do? I am the Chief Information Security Officer for the United States of America. So we've appointed our Chris DeRouche, I think his name is. We've appointed Chris DeRouche. But interestingly, I talk a lot about state and local government, especially local government, how important it is, right? All the critical things they do. New cybersecurity coordinators are coming. Okay, because apparently our protective security advisors and our cybersecurity advisors aren't enough. There's this new role being created to connect basically federal resources to states. So this is going to be someone from CISA that's assigned to making available assessments, right? There was a thing called the Cyber Resilience Review that they used to do. I think it's got another name now. Anyway, all those and other products offered by the federal government to state and local governments, really trying to push out, let's take a look, see how secure you are, give you some recommendations, which frankly is a really good example of the federal government competing with the private sector. Setting that aside for now until I talk to my congressman. Military intelligence has been buying location data instead of getting warrants. And there's too many articles like this lately. Law enforcement intelligence communities circumventing statute and process to buy tracking data from commercial companies. If this bugs you, get those apps off your phone because you're getting tracked by all kinds of stuff. What else? Solarwinds again. Let's see, and this must be in the regulatory and fines section, I guess. But in addition to a class action brought on by shareholders and scrutiny by the SEC for failing to adequately report their risk in their filings, they may be liable for losses experienced by the companies compromised using the SolarWinds software. So that can get really ugly. If anybody lost records, for example, SolarWinds may be on the hook to pay for things like credit monitoring. This is developing, and this is not going to end well for SolarWinds, I think, depending on, what the collateral damage downstream was. Another regulatory action, there is a health insurance company called Excelis. They were fined a little more than $5 million after they lost everything: names, addresses, date of birth, email addresses, social security number, bank account information, health plan, clinical treatment information, the whole thing, for more than 9 million people. Right. So, I don't know what's going to happen with those records. They're probably redundant with other records already stolen, but that happened. Financial fraud is now being called a national security threat, bringing me back to my assertion that all-out organized crime using access gained through nation-state activity might be coming. It's already that bad, and one more push might send us over the cliff. We're talking about $1 trillion a year. This is now a significant hit to our GDP. North Koreans attack security researchers. This is an interesting one. In order to build credibility with them and connect with them, Korean actors established a research blog, multiple Twitter profiles, and then interacted with their targets. And then they engaged with the very specific researchers they wanted and invited them to collaborate on a research project and sent them a booby trap visual studio project. Thankfully, Google caught all of this. Amazing, huh? That was all this week.
And by the way, Google caught it. Microsoft caught the other thing. Yep. Seems like we're really counting on Microsoft and Google these days, right?
Isn't it amazing? Yes. Isn't it amazing and there was actually another article this week about how, the private sector and corporations are doing the job of government right now because government can't seem to find its way out of anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's switch topics here. And I want to go back to security awareness training.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas here writes, security awareness training is often too boring. It needs to be entertaining and shocking to be effective. Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know about shocking, but it certainly needs to be entertaining. And if it's entertaining, it's memorable, right? I mean, so yeah. Actually, so one of the things we do in security awareness training is while Mike or Fred is doing the presentation, we have John Luke Peck, who's one of our awesome consultants in the chat, answering people's questions. Mm-hmm. And I should at some point go grab all of those questions because we've had some good ones. Like, do I need to worry about my phone, or is there a way to detect business email compromise if it comes from an outside vendor? There's been all sorts of really good questions. How does pen testing really work? That was one of my favorite. That actually, it was funny that actually I ended up talking to the woman who asked that question. She's the head of HR for a government entity, and they were trying to decide whether to hire a pen tester at the government entity. And so she was asking the question because she was reading a job description.
Wow.
Anyway, kind of funny, right?
It's kind of funny, especially when you know that you are required to do a penetration test once a year. Isn't hiring your own penetration tester like hiring your own plumber to keep on staff?
Actually, will you stop your phone from ringing there? The funny thing about, I can't believe you just said plumber. We have a leak in the shower. So right now I wish I had a plumber on staff. And the worst thing is the leak in the shower is coming through the kitchen ceiling. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
Ooh, that's
which means
bad.
we have to have somebody come into our house. And
Ooh.
all right. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So that was a lot of cyber.
Cyber.
So as a reminder to everybody, when there's something, the kicker in a local newscast is that story at the end that makes you smile. Mike, what's today's kicker?
So it has to be GameStop Gate this week, right? And I know you read about this. This is a really big deal yesterday. So a bunch of people on Reddit decided they were going to show the world how our Ponzi scheme of a stock market works. And they bought up GameStop and other company shares and drove prices way up. So since hedge funds were largely shorting those stocks, hedge funds are being run into the ground. Ameritrade and Robinhood are telling retail investors they can't play in the hedge fund casino anymore. Yeah, so, here we are. This is the way our system works, and this is how to hack it.
I mean, is that breaking any laws?
I think it's legal. Yeah. I mean, what I've read, it's legal, right? But still, there's all this pushback now. Well, you shouldn't be doing this. Well, then why did you create a system that allows it? It's a good demonstration of how capitalism is gamed, if I can use that term.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So everybody, at the beginning of this, Mike said he was just having one of those weeks. Here's what I want everybody watching to do. I want everybody to email or LinkedIn something to Mike today to put him in a better mood. Send him a joke, send him a pretty picture, send him a picture of a drum, all the things that make Mike happy. Do something to make Mike happy. That's what today is about.
This is going to end poorly for sure.
Do not hack Mike. And Alith, if you're listening, do not hack Mike. All right, everybody, have an awesome Thursday, and we'll see you next week.
And maybe see you tomorrow for SAT.
Oh, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Delivery room. Goodbye.
Bye.